it's Pixar Parker, and for spooky season, I'm going to be ranking every Pixar villain, including characters that I consider to be villains, but that aren't canonically Pixar villains. These might include the Health Inspector, Bill and Jill Anderson, the Drummer Spider, the Queen from Bug's Life, Bruce from Nemo, and many more. So this is going to be a much longer list than you'd probably see in a normal ranking video, but yeah. This is going to be a wild ride, because Pixar is a pretty mixed bag of villains, in my opinion, but let's get into it. First up, aka the worst Pixar villain, in my opinion, it's Thunderclap from The Good Dinosaur. This movie as a whole is bad. I did a video about it, and Thunderclap is just a really bad villain, if you could even call him that. He's not even that much of an antagonist, just kind of comes out of the blue, and isn't really a good villain just in general. But, yeah, he's not even a creative villain, and honestly, I don't really have much to say about him. On to the next one, I guess. Next we have Otto from WALL-E. I don't like WALL-E in general, but Otto I think is a pretty dumb villain. He's an interesting villain. His motives aren't really clear. I mean, the whole movie, WALL-E as a whole, is kind of confusing. But, in general, Otto's just kind of a bad villain, weird motives, easily defeatable, but, yeah. I don't like Otto. Next up is Evelyn Dever from The Incredibles 2. She could have been such a good villain, but she's such an obvious twist villain, too. Screenslaver was a wonderful concept for a villain, but they ruined it, in my opinion, with this twist. And in general, Evelyn is not a good villain. Screenslaver, I think, is a great villain, but again, the twist just really does not do it for me, and I just don't like it. I just don't like it at all. But yeah, it's been said, everything that can be said about Evelyn has been said before, and she's just a really bad villain. The Health Inspector from Ratatouille, who we have next, is not a bad villain. He's just not a very prominent villain, or really a villain at all. You could argue he's just doing his job, which he is, but from the perspective of the rats, yes, he is a villain, so I consider him a villain. He's just kind of a mid-villain, again, just doing his job, doesn't really add much to the story, but he got a villain defeat, so clearly it was that important, but yeah, it doesn't really have a prominent role in the movie like Ego or Skinner, who we'll talk about later, but a really nice character in the movie in general. Again, not a bad villain, but the reason he's ranked this low is, again, he's not a very prominent villain, and he's not, like, a fully outright malicious villain, I guess, if that makes sense, but yeah, nice character in the movie, not that good of a villain, so yeah. Next we have the giant squid from Finding Dory. Bro wishes he was the barracuda from the first movie. A little nitpick I have is I don't know if these giant squid creatures actually exist in the ocean, but if they don't, then I thought Finding Nemo was supposed to be a somewhat realistic depiction of the ocean, so that's another reason why this is a pretty bad villain. His role in Finding Dory in general is just kind of feels really forced, and so, in general, he's just not a good character or villain, and, like, he really just exists so Marlin can tell Dory to go sit over there and forget. So, in general, he's a plot device character, which I mentioned in my Good Dinosaur video, that I hate plot device characters. But, yeah. Giant Squid is not a good villain, or character. Next we have the Daveed Diggs character from Soul, who I just learned his name was Paul. Not really a villain, just kind of an arrogant jerk, but I decided to include him on the list because antagonistic force towards Joe, but not a bad guy, not a bad person, not even really a bad character, except he doesn't do, like, anything in the movie, so that's kind of why he's this low, but yeah, honestly, in general, Paul's just not a good villain, and he's a fine character, but again, kind of wish he did more. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, get ready for the dumbest character Pixar's ever created! It's Zurg from Lightyear. Yeah. This guy fails on every level as a villain and a character. The whole Buzz from the future thing is confusing, his villain motives are weird, and easily fixable, and yeah, honestly, just in general, this is the dumbest character Pixar has ever created, and honestly, I think he should be lower on the list if it weren't for the villains that don't really do much, but hey, at least he does something in the movie. But again, Toy Story 2 established a ton of logic about who Zurg is, so as Toy Story 2's number one fan, this infuriates me. But yeah, honestly, just Zurg is terrible villain, terrible character, from terrible movie. Yeah, honestly, I don't even want to talk about him anymore. He's just confusing, retcons Toy Story 2 and Buzz Lightyear's Dark Band. But yeah, honestly, just enough about this terrible, terrible villain. Next, we have the zombie dummy guys from Toy Story 4. The Bensons. Again, they don't really do much, but at least they do have a pretty big role, and are some nice villain assistants to Gabby Gabby, and are honestly pretty scary. So, yeah, they're actually decent villains, not as good as Gabby Gabby, as we'll get to later, but some nice villain assistants. I don't know why they're on here, but yeah, honestly, I just kind of went wild, like, listing every Pixar character I could think of that is some sort of antagonistic force, and they do play a pretty major role in the movie with, like, kidnapping Forky, so that is something. And I do like their character designs. They're a nice addition to the Toy Story universe, like ventriloquist dummies, especially considering Woody was going to be one. So yeah, honestly, pretty interesting characters. Not good villains, but nice characters. Yeah. Next up, we have Jill and Bill Anderson from Inside Out. And yes, you're probably wondering why they're on this list, but they initiated the move in the first movie, so technically they are the villains. They're not evil by any means. In fact, they're actually really good characters. Even except for the fact they don't do much in either movies, but they're nice characters. But yeah, the reason they're on there is just kind of, I consider them villains, but not in the traditional sense. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about Riley's parents, is that they're good characters. Not good, like, villains, but yeah. Continuing with Inside Out, quote-unquote, villains, we have Joy. And yes, Joy has actually been, like, acknowledged as a villain by Pixar. If you watch the Inside Pixar show, she is technically the antagonist of Inside Out. She does cause some of the problems, and she is a pretty good villain. She's a great main character, but not a good villain. Next up, we have the Pixies from Onward, which, interesting characters, don't really have much to say about them. Fine villains that actually pose quite a threat, and add an interesting element to the world. Kind of lackluster world building of Onward in general, but yeah, honestly, don't have much to say about them. They're fine villains, they're fine characters. Let's move on, because, again, I don't have really that much to say about the Pixies from Onward. Next up is the Dragon from Onward. He actually is an interesting element to the story with the curse, with the Phoenix Gem. They could have built him up more, but in general, again, don't really have much to say about this forgettable character from a forgettable movie. But yeah, honestly, just forgettable villain from a forgettable movie. Interesting scene, interesting climax. Adds nice element to the climax, though. So that's a plus with him. But yeah, honestly, I made the image of him way too long in the video. So yeah. Next is Caleb from Elio, who's kind of just your generic bully character. Doesn't really add much, not a good villain, fine character in this overall really good movie. Please support Elio, and Hoppers, and Ghetto. But yeah, other than that, just pretty fine character, not that bad, not that good a villain, but yeah. Next we have the One Spider Band from Bug's Life. This guy is scary. He scares me. The most terrifying character design in this entire movie and in Pixar in general. He's not even a villain. His character design is just I don't even want to show a picture of him. I don't want to look at him while I'm recording. Yeah, this guy's not a villain. He just really, really scares me. So, yeah, look him up at your own risk. Next, we have Professor Z from Cars 2, who's just kind of a fine secondary villain. Doesn't really add much to the story, but he's kind of a major threat, and I like that about him. Not the worst Pixar villain. Just like Cars 2 is not the worst Pixar movie. But in general, it's sort of a fine villain. So, yeah, let's move on to the next villain, shall we? Next, we have Mordo from Brave, who, again, doesn't really add much to the story, and just seems kind of like a B-plot. I do like the Legend of Mordo short, though. And he's a fine antagonist. Again, doesn't really add much to the story, so that's why he's pretty low, but still a pretty memorable and honestly threatening villain. Like, he does genuinely pose a threat to the story, which is, I like those kinds of villains. So, yeah. Anyway, enough about Mordo. Let's move on to the next villain, which chronologically is actually the next Pixar villain. Johnny Worthington is also kind of your average bully, but in Monsters at Work, he is actually a really good villain. But in the Monsters University movie as a whole, yeah, he's not that good. Dean Hardscrabble's kind of a better villain, but yeah. But in Monsters at Work, though, I really enjoyed him in Monsters at Work, because he is a great antagonist there. Anyway, next up we have another bully character, Jackson Storm from Cars 3, who, again, a pretty fine villain, establishes some nice stuff within the Cars universe and the story, so, yeah, he's a pretty good villain. Not the best, but definitely not the worst. Kind of a basic rival character that echoes some Chick Hicks stuff, but in general, really good, a really nice villain. Next, we have one of 3 Finding Nemo villains, P. Sherman, who's just doing his job and loves nature. And that's about it. Kidnaps Nemo, which does start the conflict of the story, so like Riley's parents, he is technically an antagonist, but, you know, in general, he's a pretty fine character and a pretty good villain. But only in the fact that he kickstarts the conflict, but again, he's not malicious. So, yeah. Next up, another Nemo villain, Bruce. Not malicious, in fact, a really nice part of the story and a nice subversion of the shark trope. But in general, he does pose a pretty good threat to Marlin and Dory when he smells Dory's blood. So, yeah, and this scene is honestly kind of chilling and a really, really nice, thought-out, good scene. So, yeah, Bruce might not be a villain, but he is definitely an antagonist and does pose a threat to Marlin and Dory. So, yeah. Anyway, we have another Finding Nemo villain coming up. Darla, the closest thing I would say this movie has to a villain, other than the Barracuda, which I'll talk about later. Darla is a great villain, a nice threat, a good ticking clock, and, yeah, in general, she's a really good villain, but, again, she's just kind of a hyperactive little girl that doesn't really know how to handle fish, and she is technically a murderer, so, yeah, she's definitely a villain. But it's kind of like Sid, that we'll get to later, where she doesn't know the fish are alive. Well, yeah, obviously she knows the fish are alive, but she doesn't know the fish are sentient, I guess. But, yeah. Anyway, the next villain is a step down from Darla and any of the Nemo villains. Terry, who gets like 2 minutes of screen time. Yeah, honestly, her motives are nice, and I just think they could have done way more with Terry. Sorry, I was registering my brain whether or not it's Jerry or Terry. But, yeah, honestly, Terry's not that good a villain, but honestly, what do you expect? She has, like, 2 minutes of screen time and kind of dull motivation. Which I just think they could have done more with her, so, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to the next villain. Shocker, actually, this is a villain from one of my favorite movies. Yeah, Zurg doesn't really add much. I like his Star Wars parody stuff, and he's also he's one of the first Pixar villains to be reformed, so that's nice. But, yeah. Overall, he's kind of a weak villain, but he is a toy, so what do you expect? Also, we've kind of established toys can't really die, so anything that Zurg would have done probably wouldn't have worked if he did want to kill Buzz Lightyear. Or the Buzz toy. But, yeah. A neat antagonistic force. Anyway, next we have Dean Hardscrabble from, Monsters University. Not exactly a villain, just working on their principles, but yeah, a nice reinforcer of the story, and a really cold character, and I really like how they put Mike down that eventually helps him learn his lesson. So, Dean Hardscrabble is a really nice motivator for the story, and really helps, and she really pushes the story forward, and she's a really good villain. So, yeah. Next up, we have Gabby from Toy Story 4, which is she's a pretty good villain. She is a murderer. She wants to rip out Woody's voice box, but yeah, I like her, she's like an old creepy doll, and I like her reformation arc. And yeah, I just like her entire character, and it's a really nice expansion of the Toy Story universe, and can get really emotional. I mean, I literally cry at her speech to Woody. I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. Toy Story 4 has a thing for making me cry. But, yeah. Pretty good villain. Nice redemption arc, but, yeah. Next, we have Miles Axelrod from Cars 2, who I know is pretty hated, but he's not that bad of a villain. Sure, his motivations are kind of weird, but he's not a bad villain, an interesting twist villain, and he does add something to the Cars universe, so that is very interesting to see, but other than that, just kind of a mid-villain at best, but still not a bad one. Yeah. One of the weaker Pixar villains, but sure. You know, he's a pretty good villain, and his whole alternative oil making it look bad thing actually does make a lot of sense if you do, really think about it. So, yeah, his motivations are completely, weird and bad, like everyone else seems to think, but yeah, honestly, in general, Miles Axelrod is a pretty good villain, better than Professor Z, and a nice element of the spy plot of Cars 2 as a whole. So, yeah. Next is Al McWiggin from Toy Story 2. Another villain you're probably surprised is this slow, but in general, yeah, he's a pretty good villain. Again, just kind of doing his job. He does have some nice, greed motivations, and, yes, the stealing Woody thing, it kicks off the plot, and I love the villains that, really kick off the main plot of the movie. So, yeah, he's a great character, and he's one of the funniest Pixar villains, in my opinion. He is honestly hilarious. But, yeah, Wayne Knight does a great job voicing him, and yeah, honestly, Al is a really, really nice villain, or should I say the Chicken Man, and yeah, that's really all I have to say about Al. Anyway, let's move on. Next, we have Chick Hicks, a nice rival character, one of the best Pixar has made, but not the best one. Really arrogant, really good, doesn't really add much to the story, though, but he's still a really fun and funny character. So, yeah, but again, he doesn't really add much to the story, but he just, again, a really funny, really nice character that's definitely more of a joke than a villain, but he works really well as a joke and a villain. But, yeah, he's not outright malicious, but still a good villain. Next, we have the most forced villain in Pixar history, Lord Grigon, who surprisingly is a really good villain. And I like his reformation at the end. And yeah, in general, just a really good Elio villain. And yeah, I wish him and Elio interacted more and then he had more of a clear villain motivation. But I do like what it adds to Gordon's character and Elio's arc. So yeah, Grigon's honestly just a really, really good and good villain. Yeah. Anyway, next we have Anxiety, who's not really a villain, more of an antagonist, but she works so well as an antagonist, and just her reformation arc is amazing, and just, I love her. I love that she's one of the best elements of Inside Out 2, in my opinion, and just a really good example and a really good depiction of how anxiety works, and just, yeah, she is an amazing villain. So, yeah, I like how she's reformed. I think I already said that, but yeah, just a really, really good villain. And yeah. Next is Randall, one of the best Pixar bully characters. He's so arrogant, so funny, so cocky, and yeah, a great foil for Mike and Sully, and I love how he's used in Monsters University. It's a nice subversion. So yeah, Randall's great. Steve Buscemi does a great job voicing him. And so, yeah, anyway, I think that's enough about Randall, and we shall move on to the next one. Ernesto de la Cruz is a great twist villain, one of Pixar's best. His motivations aren't that clear, and he's not a bad person. He just killed someone and stole their songs, which now that I say it out loud, is a pretty bad thing. But yeah, I like the reveal that Miguel idolized him, and it's very similar to Up, and does definitely feel like a repeat of Charles Muntz. But in general, he's a great villain. And yeah, I like how when he's revealed, he gets just way more evil than we probably would have expected. And yeah, his relationship to Hector and in turn Miguel is really good. So yeah, definitely one of the better twist villains that Pixar's made. Next we have Charles Muntz from Up. I don't really like Up, but Charles Muntz is a pretty good villain. I just wish that he was in the movie more and was more of a villain, I guess. He's a pretty good twist villain, but again, him and Ernesto de la Cruz are basically the same person, except for the fact that Ernesto de la Cruz, killed someone and stole their songs. But, again, they're both idols that the main characters idolize, who turn evil. But in general, yeah, he has some pretty dark moments and does pose a pretty good threat, so, yeah. Next, we have Ming Li, who's not technically a villain, but still. She is the antagonist, and she's a great one. I love that she's, really overbearing, and now that I think about it, why isn't Queen Eleanor on this list? Anyway, yeah, she's despisable, and she's a character that I don't really like, but she is a great villain. And her giant red panda thing in the climax is really good. But, yeah, overall, Ming Li is a pretty good antagonist, because she's not malicious. And also, I just suppose the reason Queen Eleanor's on this list is because she doesn't really do anything that bad, but, yeah. Ming Li is just a great case of, overbearingness going completely wild, and, yeah, just a great part of the story, reinforcement of the message, and, yeah, overall, Ming Li is a very, very good antagonist, and a great despisable character who, there are moments with her that I really, really don't like. But, yeah. Next, we have the Barracuda, the best Finding Nemo villain. I know that he's just a predator doing his job, but, still. Jeez, that scene is chilling. Honestly, this is one of the scariest scenes in all of Pixar. But, yeah. And he sets Marlin's motivations up for the rest of the movie, so that's great. And yeah, overall, the Barracuda is a really fun and really threatening villain, even though he only appears for a minute or two. But yeah, overall, just a really, really nice, good Pixar villain. Next up, we have Chef Skinner, who is just so funny to watch, and his slow descent into madness is really funny, and overall, a nice antagonistic force, even though he can't really hurt anybody, but a great foil for Linguini and Remy to an extent as well. So, yeah, honestly, just a really, really, really good villain, and I honestly just really like him. Anyway, our next villain is Hercule from Luca. But yeah, honestly, just a great classic Pixar villain who does, slowly become fully, violently evil, but starts out as your typical bully character, and definitely one of the best Pixar villains. So, yeah, honestly, just Hercule, really good villain. His slow descent into madness, like Skinner, was great. But yeah, and, I like how he's just kind of a kid, and, yeah, he's just aggressively evil and is proud of it, and that's what I like to see in villains. And yeah, Ercole is a really, really good villain. Alright, next we have Lotso, one of the best Pixar villains in my opinion. He's a great twist villain with some wonderful motives, a tragic backstory that's honestly great. He's just a textbook, really good villain. He poses a pretty good threat to the protagonists, and yeah, in general, Lotso is just a really, really good evil villain, and yeah, honestly, he's just a really, really good villain, and he has his backstory is great, his motivations make sense, he's malicious, cold, and evil, which is just amazing, and yeah, Lotso is honestly one of the best Pixar villains ever, in my opinion. Next we have Mr. Waternoose, another great twist villain, really similar to Lotso, but in a really good way, but yeah, his motivations are great, and he is honestly a very dangerous threat to both the monster world and to the human world, which is just really, really good to see. And yeah, honestly, just Mr. Waternoose is an amazing villain, one of the best, especially for Pixar's early years, and yeah, honestly, just love Mr. Waternoose. He's a really good villain, but yeah, next we have another villain, quote-unquote. I consider Mr. Potato Head to be the villain of the first Toy Story. One of the villains, other than Sid, of course, but who I just realized we haven't talked about. Did I delete him off the list? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, Sid and Mr. Potato Head are both great villains, because I don't think I added Sid in here, and I'm too lazy to. But yes, both Sid and Mr. Potato Head are great villains. Mr. Potato Head is so snarky and evil, and I love that he kind of gets toned down, in the other movies, but in general, in the first movie, he's a great antagonist to Woody, and yeah, honestly, he's just a really good, malicious villain, and yeah. And then Sid's kind of a worser villain, but he's great, but again, he doesn't know the toys are alive, so who can really blame him? Also, it's kind of clear that he might come from an abusive household, so he's more of a sympathetic villain, unlike Mr. Potato Head, but yeah, honestly, they're both great villains, especially for the first two Pixar villains, but yeah, it's a controversial take that I think Mr. Potato Head is the villain of at least the first Toy Story. I don't know. Anyway, on to Pixar's second villain ever. Hopper is a really good villain. He's such a good threat, and his defeat is amazing, and just everything about him is just so evil, and just a really, really good villain. But yeah, honestly, Hopper is just an amazing villain with some great motivations. He's super evil, and his defeat is so dark, and I love it. But yeah, honestly, Hopper is one of the best parts of A Bug's Life. Even as a whole, it's an underrated masterpiece. But anyway, on to the next villain. And the third villain in this list. Anton Ego. Yes, he's a great villain. I love his redemption arc, but he is so cruel. Not exactly evil. He's just a critic doing his job, kind of like me. And I love his speech about criticism at the end and the work of a critic. And he's just such a good villain. The reason why he's so high up isn't because he's maliciously evil or anything like Skinner, but just because he's such a great character. And yeah. Anyway, next we have Syndrome, which is one of the greatest characters that Pixar's ever created. His motivations make sense. He's such a good and dark threat, and just the Operation Chronos scene is great. He's a great villain and has a connection to Mr. Incredible, which I really like. Much better than Evil Endeavor. But yeah, honestly, just Syndrome is amazing. And my favorite Pixar villain is the Prospector. Who would have thought? The guy that loves Toy Story 2, his favorite villain's the villain of Toy Story 2. Who would have thought? But anyway, yeah. He's a great twist villain, the best, and his motivations make sense, and you don't see the twist coming unless you rewatch it, and there are subtle hints there that are just amazing. And he's so evil, and yeah, he's not the evilest villain, but he's just a really, really great villain, and he's honestly one of the best Pixar characters ever, and his motivations, even without a tragic backstory, are kind of sad, and you feel for him while also despising him, which is amazing. And yeah, honestly, just the Prospector is the best Pixar villain ever, in my opinion, because yeah, and also it connects to Woody and sort of parallel to Woody, which is just great. So yeah, that's my ranking of all the Pixar villains. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Have a good spooky season. I decided to do this video as a little Halloween special. But yeah, Pixar has made some amazing villains that we love to hate, and I'm excited to see how the villains progress, like Mayor Jerry and Lily Pad and Hoppers in Toy Story 5, and even the army of Buzz Lightyears is gonna be great. Also, Utility Buzz is not on there because I don't really consider him to be a villain, more of a comedic side character in my opinion, but yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day, everyone.